What's the scariest thing that's happened while you were home alone? In college, my live-in boyfriend had gone out with friends for an evening. I started to have a tingly feeling in my hand that wouldn't go away. Then the tingling spread up my arm to the entire right side of my body. Called my mom because I was getting freaked out and started slurring my speech and forgetting words on the tip of my tongue, but couldn't remember the specific word. We both recognize this as stroke symptoms and I call 911. Next thing I know, there are firefighters, paramedics, and police at my house, as well as my aunt and boyfriend that my mom had called. Turned out it was an atypical migraine and I was fine. But thinking I was having a stroke while home alone was terrifying. I still get nervous when I'm home alone or driving alone, even though multiple doctors have said it's a freak thing that probably will never happen again. This has happened to me before too. Twice. I wrote down everything that happened. I've heard it called a migraine aura. I woke up from a short nap feeling so strange. Like I wasn't on the right planet. Everything was just off. I got a tingly feeling in my left pinky that eventually spread all the way to my mouth to where my teeth and tongue were numb. To the tip of my nose and to my other arm. It's also a really scary feeling. The first time it happened I thought I was dying. I was alone in my apartment in a foreign country. But I don't think I was so scared as to call any medical services. Probably due to my stupidity. It was late at night. Like around 3 AM. And the rest of my family was long asleep. I was awake and restless and decided to go outside for some fresh air before attempting to fall asleep again. I was out on the porch for a few minutes before I hear rustling at the door immediately behind me. The front door has Venetian blinds. And I could clearly see a dark shadow in a gap in the blinds that served as the usual spot from which we'd peek. Except because I hadn't turned any of the lights on, I couldn't see who it was. I was staring back at them, wondering which one of my family it was. Until I realized that they were staring at me for a little too long and a little too motionlessly to be normal. I expected I'd see a little wave. Or someone would crack the door open and ask what I was doing outside. But nothing. Then whoever it was ducked out of view. And it was quiet. I didn't hear footsteps. I didn't hear bedroom doors. I was frozen on the step. Racking my brain for any logical explanation and kind of freaking out. I decided to go back inside. And everything was how I left it. No lights on. No bedroom doors open. Silent. Truly freaking out now. Because what the hell could that have been? There was no hint that anyone had been awakened out here. Until my fucking cat startled the shit out of me with a meow. That little fucker had a habit of standing up on the side table next to the door and balancing his front paws on the doorknob so he could look outside. I had completely forgotten. He almost gave me a heart attack out there. Maybe not the scariest thing ever. But it was a tense few minutes for me. I'm sure this will get buried. But here goes. When I was in high school, my parents and brother were away at a hockey tournament and my boyfriend was working, so I was waiting for him to finish work to go over and hang out with him. Our computer was in the kitchen, which was next to our basement stairs. My dog was happily snoring away on the floor next to me while I chatted with my friends on MSN. All of a sudden, my dog jumped up startled and started growling at the basement stairs. Figured she had a nightmare, so I went to comfort her when all of a sudden I heard a giant smash in the basement. Sounded like someone had thrown a pile of dishes on the cement ground. And then footsteps running up the stairs. I've never booked it out my front door so quickly. I ran the 6 blocks to my boyfriend's place. His mom was home, and called him at work. Asked him to go to my house. Turn off our TV, internet, and make sure our dog was okay. Yes. I'm awful. I left my poor pooch there. I was 16. Give me a break please. Close bracket. He went to my place. Dog was totally fine and nothing broken downstairs. We had lots of spooky issues with that house. But that was the first experience with it. When I was a kid, I was home alone one night. Must have been around 10 or so. That night they were showing Say Exorcists on TV. And my mom had forbidden me to watch it. But hey. She wasn't at home. I watched it. Mostly from behind a pillow and spent an awful lot of time talking to our GSD. As the movie ended, the fuse blew. And everything went dark. My mom's electrical system has always been a bit touchy. And the fuses blew regularly, along with her TVs that rarely live past 2 years. I spent what seemed like hours sitting on the couch. Too scared to go flip the fuse back on. Meanwhile, our GSD was trying very hard to protect me from the danger. She could sense I was scared. But not what I was scared of. In the end, I managed to walk with the GSD very near me to the fuse box, flip the switch, turn on every damned light, and run to bed. That GSD helped me through so many things. And after it died, I almost believed in an afterlife. We called her name at the dinner table some years after she passed. As a joke, because we had some leftovers. And immediately after we called her name, our cat turned its head towards the door and growled. It walked very slowly away from the door while keeping constant watch on it. I was home alone one Saturday afternoon. My parents were at some family event and I was watching TV when I heard some strange noises. I get up and look out the window and see 2 men walking on top of the outer wall, which is about 6 inches wide and maybe 8 feet tall. So it's quite easy to climb and walk on. As soon as I saw this, I felt my heart fall to the floor. So I ran to my parents' bedroom, locked the door and called the cops. The emergency services said it would take about 5 minutes for the police to arrive and that I should stay inside the room and try to grab something to defend myself with. The worst part came when right after I hung up the phone, the doorbell rang. You could answer through the phone because we had an intercom system. So when I answered, the conversation went something like this. "Man. This is the police. We received your call. We caught the robbers. It's safe to come outside." Me. "So how did you get here so fast?" "I literally just hung up the phone less than a minute ago and the lady said it would take about 5 minutes for them to get here. Can you please turn the police siren on so I know it's you for sure?" I didn't get a reply, so I just hung up and became even more terrified that they knew I was inside the house and were trying to lure me out. I remember shaking uncontrollably, and after a few minutes the doorbell rang again. I answer, and this time it really was the police. Asked them to do the siren thing, and when they did I felt so relieved. They said they caught 2 of them but were not sure if anyone else was inside already since they couldn't come inside, so I had to come out myself. Jesus Christ, this is the most fear I have ever felt. It took me about 5 minutes to gather the courage to open the door and ran outside. I swear I almost flew from my parents' room to the street. The neighbors were outside by then and the lady from across the street had managed to contact my parents and let them know what had happened. In the end they only caught 2 out of 3 since the third one fled in a car when he saw the police arriving. Apparently they had been robbing the area and I was incredibly lucky to have been alerted by the noise. God only knows what would have happened to 20-year-old me, a girl, if they had been successful. A tornado siren went off. But I forgot it was the first Wednesday of the month. It scared the shit out of me. Not home alone. But the whole family was there. And I can't decide if that makes it better or worse. But I had a terrible day. And was hiding in my room. My family was watching a movie. About halfway through, I hear some steps over the crunchy leaves outside my window. I look out, thinking it might be my neighbor. But I can't tell. He walks back to the crabapple tree. And hides there for the duration of the movie. As soon as it ends, he quickly walks up to my sister's window with a short ladder. Sets it up. And ducks down. I've been watching him for an hour at this point. So when he does that, I grab the gun I sleep with. I watched him peek into the window. And I could see he was dressed in all black with a ski mask on. So I couldn't tell who he was. Seeing that almost made me call the police. But for some reason I decided not to. Maybe just so I had the chance to shoot someone? I don't know. I slipped quietly off my bed. and went to tell my sister before she went into her room. She reacted a lot more calmly than I expected. I reached into her room, turned off the light, and ran back to mine to look again. He had grabbed the ladder and started running away. So I chased him down the street where he had parked behind a strip mall sauce dumpster. He was gone before I could get the license plate number, and I never saw him or his car again. TLDR, a guy in a ski mask peeked into my sister's window, but ran away before I could catch him. The first time I ever stayed home alone, it was dark outside and storming hard. My parents had gone out to dinner, and about 20 minutes after they left I heard a very loud no on the front door. And I went to the window to see who it was, and all I could see was a tall person in black hoodie. But I couldn't see their face. They were standing on my doorstep and I didn't know what to do, so I grabbed the phone and tried to call my parents' cell phone. But they didn't pick up. Then I heard a knock again, but this time it sounded like whoever was outside was rattling the door handle. And then I ran to the back of the house, locked myself in the bathroom and called 911. I was crying and shaking, and next thing I knew literally 5 police cars were in front of my house. Whoever had been trying to get inside was no longer there. But the police questioned me, and while they were there my parents pulled up and I had to explain everything to them. She was really freaked out. And the police started leaving and told us to call right back if we saw anything suspicious or the person returned. About an hour after the police left, my neighbor comes over and knocks on the door. My mom answered, and the neighbor explained he had gotten home later in the day and he was trying to pay my mom back for gas money she had lent him. He told her that Hesod knocked on the door earlier but no one answered. It turned out the intruder was literally just my neighbor. I was so embarrassed because my mom told him that I thought he was trying to break in and called the police. But yeah, that was long, but it was horrifying until the very end. Got a call from my mom that my brother had been in a skiing accident and the paramedic there was debating whether or not to take him to the hospital. I know it's not as scary as some of these other stories, but I was a little rattled. I couldn't drive yet. So what am I supposed to do? Keep on playing video games until someone comes home? My brother ended up okay. He just had a brace on his knee for a while, and he loved to tell people about it. Not me, but my uncle. He was home and fell asleep on the couch. Apparently he woke up to some sounds and the curtains were moving. My uncle grabs his cig off the coffee table in front of him, yells out a warning and squeezes 3 rounds off into his curtains. It was around 3 AM in a suburban neighborhood. Cops were called. Half of Plano PD are in front of his house screaming for him to come out. Long story short, it was his cat. Cat jumped at him and the 4-round went through his window and his neighbor's window. What a shit show. His wife made him give all his guns to my dad. Great story for the holidays. Me and my brother slept in the same room. Him on a bed and me on the mattress. We would stay up during the night playing on our Gamma Boy sauce, and we swear we would hear heavy footsteps going up and down the stairs all night, and when we told our parents they would never believe us. I slept on a memory foam mattress, and I remember one night I woke to what sounded like laughter, so I muttered under my breath for my brother to shut up, and as I went back to close back my eyes the laughter sounded like 2 kids, so I woke right up. And as I got up I saw what looked like kids' footsteps run between my legs and off my mattress. I swear I saw the footmarks pressed into the mattress. A lot of weird stuff happened into the house, but it stopped as years went by. But our parents never believed us. This actually happened last night. My parents' house is on a dead end, poorly lit street. I was house sitting with my brothers while my parents were abroad in Europe. My brothers left to get my parents from the airport at around 9 PM. And at around 9:15 I heard the front handle jiggle and the dogs went crazy. I yelled that it was locked, assuming one of them had forgotten something important. Then I heard the screen door slam shut, and I didn't see anyone or any cars outside when I looked out front. That's when I noticed our side of the house motion detector lights had turned on. I grabbed one of the guns stored at the house and a flashlight and I searched the yard to find that somebody had opened the gate to the backyard. We keep it firmly latched at all times because of the dogs. Never really been happier for or had a firmer belief in the Second Amendment. Being all alone at home on a dead-end street with shoddy cell reception. A random car stopped in front of our house with 2 women in it. The lady in the passenger seat popped out and came to our front door and left. She didn't ring the bell or anything. So I'm sure they didn't actually see me inside. After they left, I went outside and they left us present. In my teenage brain, I was like, that's so weird, and then went back inside to continue my homework. About 30 minutes after my parents got home, I remember these ladies in the present on the porch. I told them what happened. They were appalled that I didn't say something sooner. We decided to see what's in the bag. Mind you, it was nowhere near Halloween. It was springtime. There was a doll-sized coffin in the bag, and in the coffin was a homemade voodoo doll with pins sticking in it. We are all weirded out by the entire thing. Nervous laughter and all. So we decided to call the non-emergency police number and left that shit on the porch. The police officer came by and I told him what happened and he agreed it was weird and creepy and took the bag of goodies away with him. My kids were on the trampoline and 3 guys in a car stopped and the driver asked them to get in. I was on the couch, door wide open, and saw everything. Kids came in and I shut the blinds and locked the doors and waited till they left. But they drove around my block 4 times before stopping in some car parks across the road. The driver then got out of the car and started pounding on the doors. We have 3 floor-to-ceiling glass ranch slider doors surrounding the living room. He then came and looked through the kitchen window. Meanwhile, my kids were sitting on the couch, scared. And I was on the phone to TGE police. They drove off and police looked around but couldn't find them. My husband lives and works in another city during the week and he came home for a night, but I basically lived in fear the remaining week. I had just moved into my first house. Only me and the dog. I, being a genius, decide to watch The Grudge. Just when it gets really creepy, the power goes out. Slept on the sofa with the dog. Couldn't bring myself to walk past the attic hatch to get to my room. I sleep early as there was nothing to entertain me. And there's a massive hammering on the back door. Turned out to be my cousin coming to check I was okay. But being a dickhead, he decided to just keep hammering and shouting to be let in, rather than saying who he was. 2 days later. Power cut number 2. I was in the shower. Had no towel or dressing gown. I get downstairs, wet and naked. Light a few candles. Go to take one upstairs so I can get dressed. And there's a face pressed against the frosted window in the back door. Handle jiggles. I crap myself and scream. My boyfriend shouted sorry he was early and to please let him in. Made him wait until I was dressed. Was in the living room. It was summer and I was dying from the heat, so I had opened the front door, which we usually do to get some air circulation. Well, I was watching TV with the volume kinda loud so I didn't hear anyone coming. And this guy walked straight into the house. Scared the crap out of me and he looked shocked at the sight of me. Was a delivery guy. Wrong house. I was in a house in South Seattle 2 years ago. The homeowner began renting out the house after he finished some renovations. He had some not so safe contractors work on the house. The homeowner didn't sell the pitch to me so well over beers the first month of living there. The contractor ended up losing his mind on drugs. Stole a truck. Called the homeowner at 3 AM asking for $200 and to bail him out of jail halfway through the electrical work. The only issue was he didn't finish the job and left his tools there. Well, 6 months later, I am chilling on the couch working from home and I hear this guy banging on the door with all his might. This guy is going apeshit, screaming his lungs out to get in and get his tools back. Mind you, the tools were like a screwdriver, pliers, and a drill bit set. I grabbed my pistol and yelled out that the homeowner doesn't live there anymore. The contractor begins yelling that he is going to kick in the front door. I retort with, If you kick in that door, I am going to unload this clip at you. Double quote. Washington State has a castle doctrine law. So yeah. He knocked the fuck out pretty fast after I said that. I am not one to pull on someone, but this guy was threatening my life. I think I've had a paranormal experience last week. I say I think because it might just be me freaking out, but I can't find any logical explanation. For context, I live in a really small apartment in the ground floor, and no attics, basements. I was sleeping while all my roommates were in evening classes. I wake up to go to the bathroom and I notice a shadow, but make nothing of it. I just thought it was one of my roommates that came back early from class. As I approach my bedroom door to go towards the bathroom, the door closes and locks from the opposite side of where I was. So someone locked me inside my bedroom. My first thought was it was my roommate pranking me, but then I noticed that they just went live on Instagram. So I thought it was an intruder. I pick up my phone, a coat hanger for protection, and my keys that luckily I always put in my bag, so it's in my bedroom. Since my windows faces the front lawn of our apartment complex, I go out and then enter the apartment through the main door. When I enter, I notice that every single window, even the one I crawled out of, were closed. I checked every single corner of the house, and no one was there. So someone has to be either still hiding, or there was someone who managed to enter my home and go out and lock the windows from the inside. Needless to say, it freaked me out. I had just moved into my first apartment, like second or third night. I usually keep the AC off but decided to turn it on that night. The instant I flipped the switch to turn it on, fireworks started going off across the street. Some back to school thing for my university. Thought my AC unit was about to explode. Sounds dumb, but it really freaked me out. One time I was sitting on the couch home alone when my Siri randomly opened up and started typing out words like someone was talking to it. It started typing "so know what you are so good at." Saw something like that, but I closed it out almost immediately before it could say anything creepy. It was kind of unsettling, but I just brushed it off. Not too long after that, I heard pots and pans banging around in the kitchen. Nope. I grabbed my dog and keys and literally ran right out the front door. Didn't even so much as glance toward the kitchen. I walked to the park down the street and just stayed on the phone with a friend until one of my roommates came home. I told her what happened and we checked the house, but found nothing amiss. Didn't like being home alone for a while after that. I had just gotten out of the army and gone to college where my sister was going to school. I lived a block from the bars, whereas my sister lived across campus. I often left my door unlocked for her so she could crash on my couch if she didn't want to risk a cross-campus drunk walk. Note: she never took me up on it. One night, I am awoken by the sound of someone in my apartment. I was a bit more high-strung then, and I slept with the giant hunting knife under my pillow. I grabbed it and see the form of a guy, definitely not my sister, in my apartment. I flick on the lights as I yell, holding this giant knife as naked as the day I am born. Fun fact: your most scared can easily be someone else's most scared. The guy, seeing a raging Hulk carrying a 8-inch knife, was enough to make him try to scream, but too afraid to get the sound out. He curled up in a ball and shriveled to the floor. I fortunately collected myself when I saw how afraid he was. I realized he was drunk, and I told him he was going to get himself killed walking in other people's apartments. I ushered him out, still naked, and locked the door. 15 seconds later, I hear the doorknob jiggling. Best I can reason is that my apartment was where he used to crash, and in his drunken stupor thought he entered the wrong one. It took me a good 4 hours to get over the adrenaline rush and get back to sleep. I was living in a rented flat for a bit. I was asleep one night and kept hearing some weird cracking sounds. I woke up and realized someone was throwing stones at my window. I looked out and there was some drunk dude yammering to himself looking on the floor. Then I saw him pick up a carefully selected pebble, almost stumbling over on himself in the process. Stand upright. Take a moment to steady himself and compose himself for the final act of throwing. He took aim. Completely oblivious to my confused face in the window, and took a well-aimed throw. The pebble bounced off my window, followed by a drunken slur out loud which I think was a name. And X200B. I opened the window and called out, "What the hell, man?" He looked at me and said, "Who the fuck are you? Where's Jasmine? Name changed." I said, "There is no Jasmine. I live here." Double quote. And X200B. He looked annoyed and said, "No you fucking don't. I'm coming up." Dot. He disappeared into the front lobby and started on the entrance system. I suspected that my buzzer would start going off, but alas it didn't. He instead got through to a neighbor who had apparently let him in. I heard him stomp up the stairs while I put my trousers on. I have limited sympathy for drunk idiots usually, but it seemed this lad was love-struck. And X200B. Again, I expected him to start knocking on my door. However, instead he knocking on the neighbor's door, yelling, "Jasmine, opened our fucking door, man." I opened my door and asked him again, "WTF?" My neighbor emerged after hearing my voice, sensing safety. Turned out the lad was actually after my door. Said Jasmine had moved out as I had moved in. After making a drunk friend, I assured him that Jasmine did not live here. I wasn't doing his girlfriend and I absolutely lived alone. I managed to get a couple of glasses of water in him and sent him off into the night. And X200B. While it was flattering having someone throw pebbles at my window to get my attention, I have to say I'm glad for Jasmine that she had moved out. He was harmless enough. Just the drink got the better of him. I was home from school sick one day when I was 12. Woke up to a loud noise. Thinking it was just my older brother getting home. Went to the bathroom, then back to sleep. An hour or so later my brother is calling my name from the first floor. My room was on the second. He asks me if I left the front door open. A door we never use. Turns out someone broke into my house through the back kitchen windows. Came up to the second floor. And then must have gotten spooked when I flushed the toilet. I had no idea someone was in my house at the time, and I'm just glad he didn't see me. A sick, a weak 12-year-old girl. I remember being home alone and I was in my bedroom on the computer. Suddenly I heard a big rustling sound. I froze. But I didn't dare get out and check it. Just told myself over and over it was my imagination. Then my sister came home and she went to the kitchen and me after her. I looked in the trash bin and there lay my newly bought buns in a bag from the store. I asked my sister why she had thrown them in the bin. She just, "What? I didn't do that." And then I realized that the sound I heard was the bag of buns falling into the bin. And I remembered I didn't put them properly on the shelf when I got home. I felt so relieved. But also stupid. So this was pretty grand. I was nearly home alone. My family and I lived in an apartment. So noises from the little kids below us were commonly heard. My wife had a 10k run that she had gone to and I was getting our 1-2 years old daughter dressed a little while after she left. The idea was to meet her at the finish line. So we were out the door a half hour behind her. As I was finishing getting her dressed, I asked if she slept alright. "Daughter. Snaya hug." The old lady sang to me. Me. Son. Mum's not old. Daughter snow. Points her behind you. I got chills and froze. At that second, the pitter-patter of feet from the kids in the underneath apartment ran away from where I was kneeling. At that same second, as I turn my head, our AC kicks on and the last thing I see is our cracked closet door shut. I sit and stare at the door, piecing the logic of what happened. Kids made the noise. AC shut the door. When I entertained the idea it could also have been an adult sneaking across the room, every hair on my arm stood up. So I am just sitting there staring at a closed door. The damn thing jostles. Looking back on this, I imagine it was someone leaving our apartment building and slamming their door. I just remember the feeling of stress move from the hair in my arms to my face and feeling all the hair on the front of my scalp. It wasn't so until my daughter then sits in there. So she pointed to the closet. I caved. I snatched her under my arm and hauled us outside. As I am finishing getting her dressed in my car, I am keeping an eye on our door. We leave. And for the next 3 hours it's all I can think about. Nothing ever came from it. But for a brief second I thought there was a crazy bitch in my daughter's closet with a pickaxe just waiting to make her move. I was maybe 15 years old and my family had gone to a concert. They were gone till about midnight, which, at the time, was pretty late for me. I was sitting at my desk with my headphones on listening to music and playing video games on my computer when my family got home. I never heard the garage door open or hear the car pull up in the driveway since my headphones were blasting music into my ears. My family apparently didn't have a way to get in the house. Still don't understand why none of them had a key, so my sister goes around the back and pounds on the large locked glass sliding door that I was right next to as hard as she could. I had never been more frightened in my life. I sincerely thought someone was trying to break into the house since the blinds were closed and I was too scared to open them. So, naturally, I grabbed a broom and swung the door open as fast as I could and started screaming while my sister is on the other side enjoying my agony and laughing her ass off. TL. Doctor family went to a concert. Couldn't get into the house late at night. Made me shit my pants by sneaking into the house trying to get in. Thankfully, my kids were gone and I was alone for this one. One of my ex's drug dealers came to collect. I was in the back bedroom when he pounded and yelled at the door. Then I heard him come in. So I hid in my closet. He was on the phone with someone while he was ransacking the house, cursing the whole time that he's gonna fuck him up. I was on the phone to 911 when he comes in the room. I'm scared now just remembering it. I don't know how he didn't find me. He actually went through my ex-husband's closet. Luckily the police came and caught him, but I know it would have been really bad had he found me. I was home alone and was dozing off on the couch when my whole house shook. It felt and sounded like people were on my roof running and jumping across it. After what felt like minutes I was brave enough to go outside. Nothing was there, no one. I called my friend to come over since my parents were out of town. He told me it could have been raccoons, but the whole house shook. Must have been a pack of them. Really fat ones. I'm not sure, they live in groups to be honest. It was a slightly breezy night, so it may have been the trees hitting the roof, but I'm not sure what it was to this day. When I was around 12 I lived in an apartment complex with my dad. I was sitting in my room watching Sesame Street when I started to hear moaning coming from outside of the apartment. I paused my TV to listen and it was definitely coming from outside of the front door. I paid it no mind at first, but then I heard the loudest sound my young ears had ever experienced. I ran to grab the house phone and called my dad. He didn't answer because he was at work at the time. I creeped downstairs and stood on a chair to look out of the peephole. I saw the body of a woman lying there with blood gushing from her head. I called the police and locked myself in my room. To make a long story short, she was getting abused by her boyfriend and left the apartment to get help. He found her and ended up killing her in front of my apartment. I was sick and fell asleep on my couch before taking some medicine. Wasn't feeling well before. Woke up with feverish delirium. Could still keep track of my surroundings, but I hallucinated a ton of stuff that wasn't there. I kept seeing soldiers firing at each other in trenches. Explosive and gas shells landing around me. I knew they weren't real. But it was a pain to keep myself from dodging those imaginary shells coming at me. Went straight to the kitchen. Grabbed a glass of water and took some medicine. Called a family member and asked them to take me to the hospital. They did. They kept track of me and I left there the morning after. Was cooking dinner one night several months ago when our Shiba sat in front of the door and started growling and doing his low bark that he does when he tries to act menacing. I looked out the kitchen window and didn't see anyone and went into the living room to peek out there, but still didn't see anything. As I turned to go back to the kitchen, the doorknob started jiggling and trying to twist. I just sort of quietly locked the deadbolt and ran to the back to get my fiance, who hadn't heard a thing. He'd been watching YouTube videos with his headphones on. He grabs a hammer and starts yelling at the guy through the front door to leave. But whoever it was just started banging even harder and saying incoherent things. We called 911 and held the door shut as the guy kept trying to open it and pry open the windows. We watched him pace across the porch and went to our vehicle and started messing with the doors and banging the windshield before finally faceplanting in the yard and knocked himself out. When the police arrived, they talked with my fiance for a bit and it seems the guy was super drunk and thought he was trying to get into his own house as he apparently lived at the apartment complex across the street. After making sure nothing was broken, we told the officers we didn't want to press charges or anything. We've gotten more lights and are now working on setting up a smart security system to monitor the house because now we're always on edge anytime the dog barks at night. We've had another guy come up and start the whole cliche my car broke down and I need a phone laying inside, and fiance still won't wear both ears on his headphones. But doggo has done a great job and he earned a lot of snacks and cuddles at night. He now sits proudly in the living room and keeps watch by the windows for any suspicious activity that might reward him with more food. So when I was about 12ish I got home, put a frozen burrito in the microwave, set up all the fixings, sat down to eat and watch cartoons. Took my first bite. Got stuck in my throat. Tried to dig it out with my fingers, only pushing it further in. I hit myself in the stomach a few times, nothing attempting the Heimlich maneuver. One fist of a 12-year-old isn't enough. I could feel everything spinning and lack of oxygen to the brain. Seeing stars. I walked up to the sink in the kitchen and shoved my whole body up against the counter edge, putting enough force to push it out. I took smaller bits after that. Dot. Greater than sign. It was like 11:30 at night and I was in bed. And I started hearing a knocking, but it only lasted a second. I didn't think much of it, but then it happened again and I realized someone was at the door knocking. So I got out of bed and grabbed the largest buck knife I had and went downstairs to see who the hell was at the door. It was some bald guy and he asked me if some girl named Abby lived here. I told him no and he left. I was still freaked out though, and I was pretty sure he was just checking to see if anyone was home before he tried to break in. 3 AM the smoke detector in my bedroom started going off and I thought it was the house alarm and someone was breaking in. I thought, this is it. This is how I go. Realized it was the smoke detector and none of the others were going off. Waved my pillow towards it to fan the air and it stopped. Got back in bed and started falling asleep and it fucking did it again. I then could not go back to sleep because I didn't know if it was a CO2 detector, so I started to Google symptoms of CO2 poisoning to figure out if I was going to die, and got in my head that I was starting to feel dizzy and wouldn't make it until morning. Turns out the AC had kicked on and blew some dust from those stupid high up shelves Florida homes have, which made it go off. I posted this in another thread, but it definitely also fits here. I walked home from my boyfriend's house very late one night and was staying at home alone with my dog while my mum and brother were away. I had been home for about 20 minutes and was on my computer when I heard a weird noise. At first I thought it was the TV. Wait, no, that was off. Then I thought it was the dog. So I ran to check on her. Staring directly at the dog. I heard it again. Definitely wasn't her. I can only describe it as a mixture between heavy breathing and a human laugh coming from right behind the door to my brother's bedroom. I'm pretty level-headed and I've never had anything unusual happen in the house before, but this sounded so clearly human and threatening it made my blood instantly run cold. For some reason my horror movie training failed me and I called out "so hello so" and heard it again. It sounded exactly like a person right behind the door laughing mockingly intermixed with shaky breaths. I fled out the front door to the neighbor's place at 2 AM. Nothing was found, but I'm not convinced no one was there, even though everyone says it was a possum or some kind of animal. My boyfriend's roof has a family of them and I've never heard them make any noise like that. It was also very clearly from in the room, not outside. I have a bad habit of leaving the front door open for a bit while I do stuff. Often with my earphones in. After I come home and the door was open while I ran next door. Someone could have come in and left. I still get chills recalling that noise. I was 22. Renting a few rooms in an old house, built in 1912, that had no air conditioning. This was in Texas in the summer. My bed was in the sleeping porch because summer. I had all the windows open with box fans in them for air circulation. At the time, I slept in the nude. My boyfriend had lived with me before we broke up. I'm deeply asleep when the exterior door busts open and a man about my age is standing there. He's so drunk that he has to hold onto the door to stay upright. At the sound of the door opening, I leapt out of bed. Butt naked. It takes a minute to realize why he's staring at me like he is. Once I snap to the fact that I'm standing naked in front of this intruder, I grab a robe, cover myself, and shout, "What are you doing?" Double quote. Drunk guy. Is X's name here? Still wobbling and leering at me. Hanging onto my door. Me. No. Get out. I'm naked. Double quote. Drunk guy. Aha. Still leering. Looks like he's trying to decide if he can take me down. Me. I said. Get out. I pick up a stick I kept by my bed and hold it like a baseball bat. Drunk guy shakes his head no. Turns around. And leaves. I try to lock the door but he's broken it, so I block it with something to keep it closed. I was too shaken to go back to bed, so I got dressed and informed the guy who was the leaseholder that I was going to need a new lock for that door. I talked to my ex later and apparently he had been drinking after work with some co-workers at the bar across the street, being maudlin about how he missed me and what I was like in bed, and this guy got it into his head to try to see for himself. I'm eternally grateful that he decided I would probably put up too much of a fight. I wasn't sat home alone. My wife was sleeping. It was morning. My wife works nights. So she was laying down as I got up. I had a nasty email from corporate about shipping back equipment within 30 days. Sure enough, I have a stack of stuff I haven't sent back yet. So I print shipping labels. Then begin my process. It's always the same. Cut shipping label in half. Stick half in the box with the serial number. And tape the other on the outside of the box. I'm on my 6th or 7th box by now. I cut the label. Set the scissors down next to me on the arm of the couch. Stuff one half of the label in the box. Then go to tape the other on the outside. The scissors are gone. I swear I put them right on the arm of the couch. It's fairly repetitive. I look everywhere. Lift up the cushions. Look in the box. Nothing. I just cut the damn label. I hadn't moved. It made 0 sense. So I walked to the kitchen scratching my head. Reach up and grab my kitchen scissors. I turn around. Walk back into the living room and I shit you not, the scissors I had are sitting right on the arm of the couch where I thought I put them originally. Now I know there was a glitch in the matrix. So I start googling this. And apparently it's a phenomenon. So I try to think scientifically. How can I prove to myself this happened? I go get a compass from my room. I have 2 pair of scissors that are identical. Seems like a fairly simple test. I hold the compass out and level it off. Slowly lower it until it's 2 inches over the kitchen scissors. It throws the compass off by maybe 5 degrees. Seems about right. I grab the scissors that disappeared and repeat the same test. It throws the compass off by 180 degrees. Whatever happened, caused a magnetic distortion, magnetized the scissors. It lasted for maybe all of 15 minuets until it was back to normal. So I proved to myself that I wasn't losing it. However, I wasn't comforted by my assessment. Bounty hunters pulled up to the house and got out with guns drawn. They ran around the back of the house and then started knocking on the door. I wasn't about to open the door for a couple of gun-wielding men. Of course. So they were about to break it down. My mom happened to get home right before they did it. Turns out they had confused the address. So I used to have this huge German Shepherd, which was a really well trained dog. We had had this dog for 6 years. He had perfect behavior. One day I came home from school and no one was home. Like usual. I go over to pet my dog and he attacked me. He yanked me down by my leg, so I tried to crawl away. He then proceeded to bite me on the back of the neck and behind the ear. I then managed to get to the door and get up and run out. Conveniently my friend was outside, so he took me into his house. I then had to be taken to the emergency room and get sticks. To say the least, that wasn't fun. I was working upstairs and heard very loud bang, followed by my front door alarm being triggered and the dog giving loud warning barks. Shouted downstairs that I was armed and whoever it is had better leave. Cautiously came downstairs gun in hand and found nothing out of the ordinary, then heard the next door neighbors arguing outside. The loud bang was one of the neighbors slamming the front door shut. He did it with such force it tripped my own alarm sensor, and obviously set my dog off too. His boyfriend apologized later. They were having relationship problems. They split up soon after. Apparently door slamming guy was also physically abusive. Good riddance. The other guy was really nice. This happened like 2 weeks ago. My husband and I live in a townhouse with 3 floors to ourselves and neighbors on either side. It's also not the greatest area. Lots of drug deals going down. And I definitely am more aware of that at night. My husband had a late shift, so I was home alone with our dog at 2 AM. I'm doing my thing, scrolling through Reddit and half-heartedly watching Netflix in our basement, when a door on the 2nd floor slams shut. Sometimes I hear the neighbors slamming doors and getting fucked up. So I'll check in with my dog. If he doesn't respond, I know it's the neighbors and not in the house. But his head shot up as fast as possible and just stared at the stairs leading up. Needless to say, I was freaking the fuck out. I'm a petite woman. We had no weapons in the house. And I'm 99.9% sure there saw someone hiding behind the closed door upstairs. So naturally, I find the only weapon-like object in our home, which happened to be a metal paper towel holder, and dial 911 and have it ready to go in my hand. I'm telling you, it took me a full 15 minutes to go up those 2 flights of stairs and clear every room leading up. I was shaking so bad. My dog wouldn't even come with me because he's a pansy. I got up to the 2nd floor, and sure enough, the door at the top of the landing is closed. I was just up there a few hours before, and I know I left it open. I stood outside of that door, bracing myself for some ungodly being to murder me in my own house. Literally threw the door open like a wild woman and stood there, brandishing my paper towel holder in any direction, ready to fend off an intruder. My husband had left the window open, and the wind had caused the door to slam. I was about 13 and home alone with the dog. Great start. My sister had this helium balloon of a silly cartoon character. Being the young scientist, I pulled it down from her bedroom ceiling and attached cardboard ballast to the bag on the end of its string, carefully adding tiny scraps until it was neutrally buoyant. I watched it drift idly here and there in the room, following the tiny air currents that exist in a house that has drafts, sunbeams, etc. Anyway, about an hour later, as I was watching TV in the living room, my heart jumped when I realized something was right next to me. It was the fucking balloon, which had managed to make its way from my sister's room, through the hallway, into the living room, and end up right next to me. I'm getting the chills just thinking about how fucking startling that was at the time. Heart pounding. I took the thing, put it back in my sister's room, and pulled the door closed. Later, I got up to go to the bathroom, stepped into the hall, and my heart fucking jumped again. The balloon was at the end of the hallway. My sister's door had been pushed open by our dog, who had gone into the room to nap on my sister's bed, and had left a gap just wide enough for the balloon to drift through. and it had made its way all the way down the hallway to the front door, the opposite direction to which it had gone before. When it made me jump in the living room. As I watched, the balloon turned lazily so that the cartoon character's face was facing me. I took off the ballast, returned the balloon to my sister's room, and didn't screw around with neutral buoyancy again. Once I was in my bedroom and all of a sudden the door, which I had open, slammed shut. No windows were open. Fans weren't running. AC wasn't on. No one was home but me. Another time I was home alone and the doorbell rang. I went to answer it and 2 police officers were standing on the doorstep. They asked to speak to my dad, by name. Told them dad wasn't home. They asked me what kind of car he drove and if I knew where he was. They then asked me how I was related to him. They asked for his cell phone number so I gave it to them. Then rather cryptically they said, "So if you see him before we can reach him, tell him to give us a call." Dad was arrested later that day. Okay, so I was 10 and home alone for one of the first times. My instructions were to never open the door for anyone I didn't know. There was a peephole so I could see if it was a neighbor or something. Well, I hear a car in the driveway and I watch from an upstairs bedroom as a middle-aged man gets out of his car and then rings our doorbell. He waits a little while, then rings again. Once. Twice more. Then he sits in his car in our driveway and is freaking out. But I'm young and stupid and I don't want to call my parents so they will continue to let me stay home alone. 5 minutes later the dude gets out and goes for the front door again. Now he's banging on the door like a madman and I hear him yelling but he's too scared to go downstairs because we have a giant window beside the door and he will definitely see me. When he finally gives up and goes to his car again, he parks it in a driveway across the street facing my house and then just waits. Meanwhile 10-year-old me knows this is seriously creepy behavior and thinks he's definitely 100% coming to kidnap me. So I finally call my parents as he's getting out to ring our doorbell again. My parents call our neighbor who goes over to talk to him and see what's up and why he's obsessed with our house. Meanwhile in Tez trying to hide in the closet with a phone, awaiting my imminent death. So, my parents call me back, probably laughing at me, and tell me this guy is the son of our cleaning lady, Connie. He came to pick her up but got her work addresses mixed up and she was not at our house that day. As Connie was an older lady with a hearing issue, her son thought she had fallen in our house and either couldn't get up or couldn't get to a phone to call for help. So while I was upstairs freaking out, he was outside freaking out thinking his mom was hurt or dead. Not scary as an adult, but scary as a 10-year-old. For the whole week before I was home alone I'd been searching for my key to my front door. Couldn't find it anywhere so thought I must have just lost it. Then one night while talking to my mom I realized I might have left my key in the front door because when I came home after losing so my key let myself in. I was so panicked and stressed out. My neighborhood isn't exactly safe. We got a locksmith in straight away and changed the lock. Even though I wasn't 100% sure I'd left my key in the door it's better to be safe than sorry, right? So few nights later my mom was working late and I was home alone. I was in bed and knew she'd be home soon and as I was dozing off I heard a key in the door. The key was jiggling about for ages and I froze. Instinct told me it wasn't my mom. I creeped into the front room and looked out the window and there he was. A man at my door with a key trying to get in. I was frozen with fear. I knew the key wouldn't work because it had the locks changed but the thought that if I hadn't what could have happened terrified me. After a few minutes he must have realized the locks had been changed and left. I obviously left my key in the door and he seen it and took. He must have been watching the house waiting for a dark night when there was no car in the garden and all the lights were off so it looked like no one was home. I thank God every day that I just played it safe and changed the lock straight away when the doubt came into my mind. No doubt that was my worst night alone. So I used to work for my uncle. serving food in a few different places located close together. He owned a few businesses in a party town. And I had gotten out of work late at night, smoked a little, and went to sleep on one of the couches in my uncle's house. I woke up a few hours later, and someone was sleeping on the other couch. I assumed it was my brother because he was working later than I was that night. Turns out it was a random guy who was strung out on drugs and wandered into the wrong house. Still gives me goosebumps knowing that I slept next to a complete stranger for a few hours without a clue. When I was a kid, maybe 8 or 9, my brother, 11 or 12, and my sister, 15 or 16, and I were home alone while my parents went Christmas shopping. All of a sudden, we hear a big thump on the sliding glass door. We look out and see that the outer pane is fully spider-webbed with cracks and a large hole in the middle. The inner pane was still solid. We called the police because we thought someone was shooting at us. They come out and dig the bullet out of the window and figure out it's a ball bearing, likely fired from a wrist rocket. Turns out our juvenile delinquent neighbor and his sociopathic friend decided they wanted to shoot stuff. In the dark evening, during a heavy snowfall, they told the police. We saw something moving in the woods and were scared, so we shot at it. Our dogs live out there, you shats. Also, the door is on the 2nd story and there's a deck in the way. Also, my sister was sitting at the table basically right in front of the door. If it had gone through both panes of glass. Home alone hungover one Sunday morning. Went downstairs to get a drink. I look out the dining room window and there are a number of police cars sitting outside my house. And a bunch of fully armed police pointing their guns at me. Honestly thought I was going to die. Turns out some crazy lady had called the police saying her son had been dragged into my house and shot. I'm a 5'3" relatively petite woman. They soon realized there was no way I had done that. The adrenaline cleared the hangover pretty quickly at least. Close bracket. This was the only time I ever considered leaving my house despite the fact I had no car. I was putting on makeup to go to an event later that day and heard something fall. I thought nothing of it since I have dogs who are clumsy. A minute later, I hear footsteps approaching the room I was in. I stopped everything I was doing and just listened. I heard nothing for a few seconds but decided to go check it out anyway. House has been broken into before. As I exit my room, I see my dogs are laying in the hallway together and they looked scared. They once not come with me, so I just brave it myself and go into the living room where the sound was coming from. I see nothing and just sigh. A few seconds later I hear the footsteps from earlier rapidly approaching me from the dining room. As they were getting closer, stuff was falling off the tables and chairs. I froze and just said snow. Sit stopped and I didn't hear the footsteps for the rest of the day. A few days later, my sister came to me shaking because something kept running up to the side of her bed. I decided to sleep in her bed with her so she wouldn't be scared. No joke. 5 minutes in I hear heavy footsteps running up to the side. The fan that was blowing on us was being blocked by whatever was standing there. My sister slept with her Bible for a few weeks after that, lol. Well, lately I've been waking up and finding strange things. Just this morning I woke up and found some cheese and hot dog buns in my bathroom. As if I had sleepwalked and tried to make a midnight snack. Someone also ate my leftovers that I was saving. Then yesterday morning I woke up and found some chips and graham crackers in the living room. And I just don't remember doing it. At all. Haven't had a blackout since college and as far as I know I'm not a sleepwalker. I'm sure it was me, but it was late at night and my parents had gone to a baseball game or something. I have this one robotic T-Rex toy from when I was like 8 that I had placed outside because I had no room for it inside. I live in Southern California. And it was summer, so I had no reason to worry about it getting rained on. Keep in mind I haven't turned it on in years and the batteries are dead or close to it. So I was eating a bagel with a blanket over my head and basically just walking around the house at random. I glanced outside through the sliding glass door and saw the toy. It was just sitting there. Being a toy, I went to the kitchen to get some water and came back. While getting the water, I heard some weird moaning and roaring noises coming from the toy. When I came back, it had moved at least a foot and its eyes moved for a couple seconds before turning off again. The eyes on the toy moved when it was functioning. So that was definitely possible. I'm getting the chills just typing it. I found a strange dude leaving my house just when I got back. I had only stepped out for about 7 minutes. Our house is right in the village center and our backyard borders on the Market Square parking lot shopping street. I had gone there to pick something up and was only a few meters away. Then returned home to find our back door, which we use for going in and out, as is custom here, open. A stranger saw a bicycle parked right in front of our yard and a dude strolling out of the door. We met halfway in my backyard. I was so shaken that I let him go. Not that I could have done much against him. Called my fiance. Called the police. Found that the dude had gone through my wardrobe, my panties and bra sauce. Never heard if they caught him. Late to the party but the first time I babysat myself. I think I was about 10 going on 11. My parents went out to dinner and my 2 teenage brothers were never home. I sat calmly in the living room pretending to read but was really feeling so alone and vulnerable. My heart started racing as I thought what I'd do if someone broke in, where I'd run to, etc. I clearly made a mistake and was not ready. I stood up and walked down the dark hall toward my bedroom. I had to walk halfway down to get to the first light switch and had that brief feeling of sweet relief when the light flooded the hall. I proceeded to my bedroom and reached for that light when my oldest brother pops around the corner and says, "Why? Hello." I was so fucking stunned. My legs gave out and I collapsed so suddenly that I knocked the wind out of myself. I was trying to drag air back into my lungs and remember thinking, "They've finally done it. They've killed me." Double quote. Not necessarily scary because of what I found but scary because I'd had a premonition of it. When I was about 8/9 staying at my grandma's house I woke early in the morning. I laid there thinking about how horrible it would be if she fell and hurt herself when we weren't there because we only come once a week and we wouldn't know. And then I thought, well, I better go check in case she has, not that it had ever happened before. Plus it was around 6:00 AM so realistically she wouldn't even be awake, so no idea why it had come to mind. Ran downstairs full on pretending to be a hero only to see my nan's feet poking out the door from the kitchen. She's taken a tumble sometime in the night and had been there for hours. She was okay. But it was the beginning of the end. I've had a few weird premonitions since then too. I was home alone with just my dog for the week. My mom was gone on a trip out of the country. As I was shutting my computer down to go to bed for the night I heard a voice of a little girl say something indistinct. I heard something daddy. I couldn't understand the first 2 words. But it was the voice of a little girl as clear as day. As if she was standing right next to me, speaking. I would have questioned if I was just hearing things. But my dog immediately stood up on my bed and was looking around the room as if he were looking for the source of the voice. He heard it too. Fucking weird, man. I was in my PC that's next to my bed, my cat was sleeping in it. Suddenly he jerks his head up, looks at the middle of the room for 10 seconds. I'm already creeped out calling his name and stuff so he would stop being creepy. Next thing I know he jumps in the air. Like he just got super scared and I see a white flash followed by a loud bang. Almost craped myself right there. I thought I had died. Fucking lightning. When I lived in an apartment building, the door straight across from me belonged to this lady whose ex would find his way into the building time and again and beat on her door. He'd scream threats. She'd scream for someone to call the fucking cops. These sessions could last upwards of an hour. And always happened when I was about to want to leave. It soon became a rule in the building to never hold the door for anyone. I wish I was joking. We were actually told regardless of circumstance never let someone in. No key. No entry. At the time I lived alone with the exception of a dog, and I was near plastered drunk and fell head first down the stairs and knocked myself out. It was dark when I remembered heading downstairs and woke to the dog licking my face the next morning. It was kinda terrifying waking up like that and remembering the events from the day before. If I had have seriously injured myself, no one would have been there to help and no one comes by to visit, so I could have been dead before I was found. The only other thing that terrified me while being home alone was having the flu for 5 days. I have never in my life been so sick and drained of energy that I couldn't even get out of my bed. I mean, I was so weak at one point I cried because I thought I was going to die. I finally snapped out of it and mustered enough strength to roll out of bed, crawl and make my way downstairs to find something to eat to get my strength back. Sometimes living alone sucks. But Assad don't think Assad trade it for anything else right now as long as I'm not sick, drunk or broke. Saturday before Thanksgiving 2015. My home was on the edge of my subdivision, with fields and ponds beyond our fence and homes for several hundred yards. As a result, I usually slept with my blinds open, because we like the sunrise. I woke up at 2 a.m. to pee and opened my eyes to see a drone hovering outside of my window. The second I realize what I'm seeing, I bolt upright and the drone just shoots straight up out of my field of view. Called 50 for the small town I lived in. The 3 cops on duty assured me it would be okay. They probably didn't see anything. Close my blinds at sundown now. I wasn't at home alone but was alone upstairs. I was about 14 at the time. It was around 10 p.m. and I was sitting on the couch watching TV. The couch was against a big window with long vertical blinds which can be seen through if you saw up close and look through at a slight angle. I heard a knock on the window behind me. We had flower beds beside the front door, so they would have had to step into them to reach the window. I was, and still am, an easily scared kid. I was paralyzed in fear and slowly slid down to the floor and out of sight of the window. I stayed there for a minute until I heard another knock. I found the courage to run down the stairs where my mother was doing laundry and told her what I heard. At first she didn't believe me but came upstairs anyways and looked out my brother's bedroom window where she was able to see the front door and whoever was out there. The window was a little higher than the living room window and as she looked down there was a man standing below my brother's window looking up at her. It scared the hell out of her, which terrified my brother and I even more. My mother is a brave woman and went to the door to see who it was. Turns out it was the ex-husband of a friend who somehow knew where we lived and ended up passing by the house and stopped to say hi. We were in close with him, not his ex-wife, and he was known for being an angry and unpredictable man, so it was strange and made me feel super uncomfortable. Especially the fact he didn't just come to the door. It didn't exactly happen in my home. Instead it was a few blocks away as I was riding my bicycle around at the age of 7-8. A rather insane looking woman hit me with her car, sending me flying over her windshield, over the top of her car, and dropping off the trunk. It's important to note that she swerved into me. There's no reason she should have hit me. She immediately got out of the car and grabbed me saying, "I need to take you to the hospital," and started dragging me to an open rear car door. At the time I thought she was just panicking, but now I realize she was actually trying to abduct me. Luckily all my spider senses told me something was very wrong and I started screaming and pulling away from her. She immediately hopped back in her car and peeled out. My mom was in the hospital 50 miles away. I was 19. We were pretty sure this was it. I was home alone. My parents' house is big. It's off the beaten path on a small lagoon. My dad had been staying up at the hospital that night. I went to bed about 1 a.m. I was playing on my laptop. My room was in a separate wing of the house. It can be sealed off with a single locking door. The door was shut but not locked. I have always been scared of the dark, so I had the lights in my wing on. So was the closet light. As I was messing around on GammaFAQs, I saw the lights in my wing turn off. All of them. The band of light under the door went black. I hopped up in bed and stared at it. My bedroom door was unlocked and I was debating getting up to lock it when the shut door slammed. As in, it sounded like someone straight up kicked the bottom of the door with all their strength. I remember squeaking in shock. It took me about 6 seconds to be up on both feet with a blade about 4 paces back and just right of the door. I remember thinking if the door opened, I could be on whoever it was almost instantly. I was also silently cursing that there was no light under the door anymore. No way to see the shadow of whoever was out there. Nothing happened. I was fighting off the fear of the situation and stupidly decided that going on a fence was all that was left. I didn't have a phone in my room. And my Nokia was in another wing of the house charging. I threw the door open with my knife low and my left hand in a guarded position. There was no one there. I tossed the hallway light switch on. There was no one in my wing. There was no one in the house. The burglar alarm was still on. Confused, I turned on the main house lights and sealed the wing off with the locking door. I went back to my room and just sat there with my laptop open. My bedroom door now had a slight bow in it. A couple hours passed with me warily laying in bed. Around 3 AM, the lights under the door went dark. Now I was terrified. My knife seemed pretty insignificant and my previous dumb courage had ran out. I scooted my bed, no easy task, against my bedroom door. Grateful the door opened inward, I retreated to my closet and waited for the sun to come up. When the skylight in my room got bright, my courage returned and I moved the bed and exited my room. The wing door had been unlocked, which required a key. I heard footsteps coming down the stairs in the main house and realized my dad was home. I felt a little foolish as obviously he had been responsible for turning the lights off the second time. I lead my greeting with "So it was you who turned all the lights off?" She looked at me and said, "She got home about 10 minutes ago." I have zero clue what happened that night, but it never happened before that night or after. My parents built the house and nothing untoward had ever taken place there. My bedroom door at my parents' house still has a bow in it to this day. This was over 15 years ago. My mom is still alive. And for that, I'm extremely grateful. My cat likes to bring me random things from around our house and he makes a funny meow when he does it because his mouth is full. Every time I hear his muffled meow I know he is bringing me something. One time I heard him in my craft room funny meowing and looked to see what he had this time. He was walking towards me with an X-Acto knife in his mouth. It was terrible.